I met her about a year ago. At that time, the restaurant that I had inherited from my father was losing customers and was at risk of closing down. The restaurant was located in a town adjacent to a fairly well-known tourist attraction, akin to something like Napa Valley. Tourists used to flood into our town, making it a bustling place. However, a few years ago, the town's train station became a mere stop for the express train, resulting in fewer tourists stopping by and a drastic decrease in customers at my restaurant. I had confidence in the taste of my food. I didn't want to shut down the restaurant so easily. But I couldn't think of a good solution. In order to clear my head, I decided to refresh myself by spending a night at a hotel with hot springs in the neighboring town of Sonoma, a place that also held connections to my father. "Mr. Jones, my name is Catherine, the young proprietress here. I'll bring your dinner, with drinks and appetizers shortly, but the main dish may take a bit longer. I hope you understand." "Is there a problem?" "Actually, one of our kitchen staff fell ill unexpectedly, and so, well, if it's an emergency, there's nothing we can do. I apologize for the inconvenience." "Is the staff member okay?" "Yes, our head chef. Well, he is conscious. Just, due to his age, we had to." "I see. Take care of him." The person who fell ill, as Catherine, the young proprietress, had unintentionally mentioned, was the head chef. The reason I have chosen to stay at this hotel was because I wanted to taste that head chef's dishes. My late father and this head chef were both apprentices at the same fine dining restaurant. I had heard from my father that they often had disagreements about the taste of the dishes. Eventually, the two had a falling out. My father opened his own restaurant, while the other became the head chef at this hotel. I also often argued with my father about the dishes we served in our restaurant. But now, as I approached 40, I understood clearly. Chefs argue and confront each other because they recognize each other's skills. The stubbornness and pride of a chef can lead to such conflicts. I came to this hotel hoping to gain some insights for revitalizing my own restaurant. However, it seems like tasting the dishes of the head chef I was looking forward to was not available. I hope my old man isn't interfering because he doesn't like the idea of me using this place as a reference. Well, even though they had a falling out, my father wouldn't meddle from beyond the grave with the chef. "I apologize for the inconvenience. We will reduce your accommodation fee by 10% as a slight compensation." A 10% discount? You kidding me? The next morning, when I went to the front desk to check out, Catherine was being bombarded by complaints from other guests. It was undoubtedly because of last night's dinner. "Cut it out, will you? What's your problem? You ate all your dinner, right?" "I ate it." "Then, it's all good." I glared at the guest. The guest seemed a bit taken aback and started whining. I ate it, but it was so late that my entire schedule got messed up. "Were you planning to go somewhere nice?" "It's none of your business. It was an emergency. Understand that. But, get it." Seeing me get stern, the complainer seemed to have given up. Feeling a bit smug, I gave a snort and a smirk at Catherine, who was bowing her head in thanks. In the end, I returned home without finding even a hint to revamp my restaurant. I had no choice but to continue my modest business, catering to a few regular customers. One day, a seemingly 70-year-old man walked into our restaurant. It seems not really much of a drinker, as he slowly savored the warm bourbon while enjoying 2 or 3 dishes. Occasionally, he would nod approvingly and murmur, "That's good." When I served him the grilled chicken and soup he ordered as his last course, he seemed to enjoy the chicken but tilted his head curiously at the soup. "Is it not to your liking?" I couldn't help but ask. He then inquired if the soup was made with the same recipe I'd inherited from my father. "Well, yes, it is," I responded. While I was growing concerned about a potential problem with the flavor, the man introduced himself. I apologize for the abruptness. I'm Richard Taylor. Richard Taylor. I was confused, not recognizing the name or the face in front of me. I used to share meals with your father back in the day. It's me, Richard, he clarified. I finally realized who he was. He was the head chef of the spa resort I stayed at, who had fallen ill abruptly. He was my father's former fellow apprentice, from whom he had parted on bad terms. I am deeply sorry for my sudden illness when you visited us, he apologized. How's your health now? I'm fine now, as you can see. Richard responded, blushing a bit as he ran his hand through his trimmed hair. Did you come by chance? I heard it from the young proprietress, you know. She had told him about the man who had placated a disgruntled customer the morning after the head chef had collapsed. Young proprietress checked the guest book and informed Richard that it was a certain Noah Jones. Ah, so you're the son of that Jones, and so, tonight, he had come all this way to thank me. That reminded me that my father and Richard had parted ways over their differing cooking styles. When I asked Richard about it, he replied, that is true, but we respected each other's skills as chefs. It was just a matter of different directions. My father always aimed to complement alcohol, so he pursued flavors that matched well with drinks. Richard, on the other hand, not being a big drinker himself, sought after flavors that appealed to everyone. That's why we went our separate ways. Though my father and Richard rarely met, they stayed in touch, he said. You know, I briefly met you at your father's funeral, Richard added. Oh, I see. My apologies for not remembering, I replied. It's been 5 years already. Yes, time flies. As I responded, Richard looked off into the distance. I was curious about Richard's reaction when he tasted the soup earlier. About the soup. Oh, it was delicious, but it felt different from your father's flavor. So, I remade the soup and offered it to Richard. After he took a sip, he said, it feels similar, but does it lack something? Well, how should I put it? It's a more refined taste. Richard, weren't you usually serve my father's soup after a heavy night of drinking? Yes, that's right. Back in our apprentice dormitory, your father and I used to drink together a lot. I'm not a heavy drinker, so I would get drunk quite quickly. Then, your father would say, here, have this as the last drink. It was so delicious. Even when I tried to recreate it by brewing the broth in my way, I couldn't. I asked your father if there was a secret ingredient, and he would say, the secret ingredient is love, keeping it a mystery. The secret was quite simple. My father's dishes were generally strong and flavorful to pair well with alcohol. However, he made his final course soup light. The method was straightforward and nothing special. Simply, he added 1 cup of hot water to 3 cups of regular soup stock to dilute it. After heavy drinking, that was just right and healthy, according to my father's philosophy. I see. After you had a fair bit to drink, saying the secret ingredient is love wasn't entirely off, was it? Richard took a sip of the soup I'd made from scratch, thinned with hot water. It seems I haven't had enough to drink tonight. Is it, perhaps, a bit bland for your taste? Yes. Richard and I burst out laughing. Then we spent some time reminiscing about my old man. Towards the end, Richard got serious. Sorry to ask, but did you lose customers after the termination of the express train stops at the station? Well, yeah, I guess so. Has it affected your business? It's been barely making ends meet recently. Why don't you come work with me after I retire? After you, Richard. You mean at your hotel? Richard explained that he's getting old and thinking about retiring soon. The staff he currently has are excellent chefs, but something is missing, it seems. Everyone's too obedient. They lack the spirit. We don't have anyone with the backbone your father had. I wonder if you'd be a good fit. I wasn't sure if I had as much spirit as my old man did. Plus, it wouldn't be fair to the sheiks who've been there from the start if I just walked in. I'm honored by your offer, but I can't give up on this place. It's my dad's legacy. I'm not ready to let go yet." When I said this, Richard seemed to understand and nodded several times. "You're right. I was too hasty. After all, you're the son of that great man." And then, leaving me an invitation to visit his kitchen if I ever change my mind, he left a complimentary voucher for his hotel before departing. About 3 months had passed since Richard started visiting my diner. My business was on the verge of collapse. Maybe I should go and check out Richard's hotel. I wasn't ready to close the doors on my diner just yet, but I knew I needed to do something if I wanted to move forward. "Mr. Jones, we've been expecting you." Did I arrive a bit too early? Aiming for a time before the chefs would get busy with dinner preparations, I'd arrived at the hotel a bit early. "I'll call the head chef for you. He should be free at this time. That's why you came early, right?" She knew my intentions. As I was apologizing to her, she just smiled and said the head chef was also eagerly waiting for me. "Hey, everyone, listen up. This is Noah Jones, the man I've been telling you about." As soon as he guided me to the kitchen, Richard introduced me to the other chefs. Everyone bowed their heads and said, "Nice to meet you." "Richard, I'm still not. I understand. It just happens that some of our experienced staff decided to go independent recently. Look, they are all young, aren't they? So I told them that a friend of mine might be able to lend a hand. That's you." Richard said that, but I felt a little uncomfortable. After all, I hadn't given up on my dad's diner. That night, after a dip in the hot springs and returning to my room, the hotel's maid had set up my dinner. When asked what I'd like to drink, I ordered a glass of bourbon. Shortly thereafter, the bourbon was brought in. The one who brought it was the young proprietress, named Catherine. "Thank you for coming today. Thank you for having me. Please, have a drink." "Thank you. I'm honored to have the young proprietress herself serving me." "Oh, it's nothing. I've heard about your father from the head chef." Recently, Richard had been talking about my dad to Catherine every chance he got. He told me that the person I am now, it's because of your father. It's odd. My dad used to tell me about Richard, whom he had a falling out with. He referred to him as a fellow apprentice. I continued. "You know what they say, the better the friendship, the fiercer the fight." I mused while I poured myself another glass, and then another, from the bottle that Catherine had handed me. "Please, feel free to indulge tonight," she suggested. She was quite persuasive. And by the time I was fairly inebriated, Richard arrived. "How about this, as a second helping from your dad, a nice bowl of soup to finish off," he offered. I felt a strong urge from Catherine and Richard to become a cook at their hotel. But I couldn't bring myself to close the restaurant my father had left me. That night, I was alone in my bed and I couldn't fall asleep. "What part of this dish do you not like?" "It's old-fashioned. The food Dad cooked. It doesn't matter what you said. We're serving this to customers." I remember arguing with my father about cooking. Those memories faded in and out in my drunken head. My restaurant was quiet for the days that followed. Until one day, an unexpected customer arrived. It was Catherine. "Oh, you startled me. I just decided to come." "Did Richard suggest you come here?" "Yes, partly, but I also wanted to come," she replied. "Just a moment, please," I said to Catherine and pulled in the shop curtain that was hanging outside. "Sorry, but we're closed for today." "Because of me?" Catherine asked, looking a bit apologetic. since you're already here, and it's not like we're busy." I gestured around the empty restaurant with a resigned laugh. "So things are really tough, huh?" "I'm ashamed to admit it," I confessed. "I heard rumors about a major blow to the next town ever since the express train started passing through," she mentioned. "Anyway, let's forget about these depressing talks. Let's enjoy ourselves." Catherine was quite a drinker. She was the only daughter in her family that had been running a spa resort in the area for generations. Naturally, she became the young proprietress. She had learned to drink since she took over the role. I start working early in the morning, and I find myself looking forward to a drink after a long day. I'm the same, but in my case, I think I just inherited my father's love for alcohol, I replied. Just a few months earlier, Catherine and I had met only once or twice, but we were now talking like old friends. "Come on, let's have another round." "Another one?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, just one more. But my heart is already full." "Dad, I'm sorry, I can't keep running this restaurant anymore." 6 months later, I closed the restaurant that my father had left me and took a job as the deputy chef at the spa resort where Catherine and Richard were. Thanks to Richard's efforts, the existing chefs warmly accepted me. When I was appointed as deputy chef, the young proprietress Catherine had proposed a condition. "Please live here in this resort and join us for a drink after work." This was exactly what I wished for. I had no reason to refuse. "Noah, come on over here, let's have a drink." "Again tonight? Why not? Let's do it." When I entered the room where she was waiting, I saw Catherine happily pouring whiskey. "Here, have a glass." I responded with a nod and took the shot glass in my hand. And as Catherine poured for me, I thought to myself, I'm about to turn 40. It's not that I haven't had girlfriends in the past, but I've stayed single up to this age. My late parents were late to marry, and when my dad was 40, I was born. Now, as I'm about to turn the same age as my dad was when I was born, I'm here, every night, getting whiskey poured for me by Catherine. Maybe this is what they call fate. "What do you mean?" In response to Catherine's question, I said this. "Will you accompany me for a nightcap for the rest of our lives? For the rest of our lives." After a moment, Catherine smiled broadly and nodded vigorously. Catherine and I gazed at each other. It was a moment when our feelings connected. Thus, Catherine and I got married, with Richard, who retired, serving as a matchmaker. Working together, we strive to manage the hotel. How was it? Subscribing to the channel would be a great motivation for us to continue making content. See you in the next video. My name is Robert Stanton. I'm a salesman at a company that's ingrained in the local community. This year I'll be turning 28, but this city isn't where I grew up. I left my hometown as soon as I graduated high school and made a beeline for this place. I'm genuinely thankful to the boss who hired a high school graduate like me and helped me grow into the man I am now. Back in the day, I had quite a reputation as a troublemaker in my hometown. You could say I was a bit of a wild child. I had a thing for motorcycles, and I was pretty darn good in a fight too. Or rather, I guess I just hated losing. After all, you can't lose a fight if you don't admit defeat. However, my wild antics definitely caused some headaches for my folks and teachers back home. These days, I'm all reformed and a respectable member of society. I don't go back to my hometown, but each time I reach out, I can tell my parents breathe a little easier. I've even started to send them a little money now and then. One day, after coming back from a client's place, I got a call from the boss. Apparently, he'd been waiting for me. I made my way to the boss's office, where the ever white-haired man greeted me. "I apologize for keeping you waiting." As I lowered my head in apology, the boss just smiled and said, "No problem." This boss of mine, he's one of the good guys and is well known even in this town. He's pretty invested in community development and knows a lot of folks. People come to him for advice on all sorts of things, not just work-related. And he's always been incredibly caring. Despite having no ties to him, he took me under his wing like I was his own son. I was motioned to sit on the guest sofa. As I sat down, the boss started to talk. "Sorry for being so sudden, but Robert, what do you think about matchmaking?" Caught off guard by the sudden proposal, all I could do was let out a puzzled sound. "I mean, it's true my social life lacks a feminine touch. Mainly because I haven't felt the need for it. To set the record straight though, it's not like I can't attract the opposite sex. It's just that I haven't felt like dating anyone. I still think I'm in the middle of getting my life back on track. I just wasn't in the mood to get a girlfriend." But what the boss suggested was matchmaking. This wasn't just about introducing her, it was about setting me up for marriage. Moreover, the introduction came from the boss, who was my benefactor. I felt anxious, wondering if there was any way out for me. I was trying to think of a way to decline, but my mind was all over the place, especially at a time like this. "Listen, she's the daughter of the owner of Harris Enterprises. You've seen her a few times, haven't you? She shows up at Chamber of Commerce parties too." I'd seen the daughter of the head of Harris Enterprises before. She was well known in this part of town. But not because she's cute. She's famous for never smiling. It sounds good to call her a cool beauty, but she has zero sociability. Her beautiful eyes and well-proportioned face stood out even at the Chamber of Commerce parties. I'd always been friendly with the Harris Enterprises and the boss, and I wondered if maybe the boss couldn't refuse them. "She is about the same age as you. The president said he wanted me to introduce a good young man, and Robert, your face immediately came to mind." He handed over the marriage interview photo with a smile. When I opened the old-fashioned marriage interview photo, there was the daughter of the Harris Enterprises boss, dressed in a formal dress, sitting with a composed look on her face. She was definitely pretty and cute, but I thought I wouldn't like such an unsociable woman. I have my ideals too. A homey, cute girl with a smile. I like girls who eat well. The girl in the photo doesn't look like she eats at all. She looks so out of this world that I thought she might be eating mist or something. I think I'm not worthy. I tried desperately to decline with a non-committal phrase. "What do you mean? Are you saying my eyes are clouded? There's no one more suitable than you, is there?" The boss showed no signs of backing down. In the end, I was overruled by the boss's "Why don't you at least meet her?" and I agreed to the marriage interview. Seeing the boss's happy face, I started to feel a pain in my stomach. The date for the marriage interview was set immediately, and I bought a new suit with the money the boss gave me. I wanted to decline the suit, but the boss told me not to destroy his reputation, so I ended up buying a new one. So, on the day of the marriage interview, I entered a high-class restaurant in a brand new suit. I had a sharp pain in my stomach from nervousness since morning. I hadn't told my parents about the marriage interview because I planned to decline somehow. The boss was sitting with me as a substitute for my parents. After a while of sitting, the landlady of the restaurant showed up. And with the landlady announcement that your party has arrived, the face of Harris Enterprises boss appeared. And behind the president, his daughter in a formal dress follows. Seeing her up close, she had skin like porcelain and a beauty that was somehow out of this world. I was taken aback. Sorry to keep you waiting. This is my daughter. Her name is Nora. President Harris introduces her. She slightly retracted her chin and nodded to me. Of course, there was no smile on her face. Rather, I was startled by the sharpness of her gaze when she quietly looked at me. In the end, the marriage interview was just the bosses talking while we focused on eating. It was a very uncomfortable space. The meal was finally over with the dessert, and the two bosses left the table together, saying now it's up to the young people. It's a common sight at marriage interviews. As soon as the two of them left, the girl who had been silent until now opened her mouth. Do you want to get married? Her sudden aggressiveness made me momentarily angry. Who talks like that? Always take the fight if it's offered to you. That's how I've lived thus far. If someone's spoiling for a fight, I won't back down either. Her icy gaze stabbed at me, clearly pissed off at my attitude. The marriage interview was your parents' idea, wasn't it? You could have put it more tactfully. You have been staying silent throughout the meeting. Are you trying to embarrass my boss? Think about it. Once I start talking, it's hard to stop. I express my distaste for her attitude. Acting high and mighty, who do you think you are? Living a life that gives you the right to lecture others. We both seem to have confrontational personalities. After a huge argument that caused the landlady to intervene, the marriage interview ended. I figured she would be the one to reject me. Even so, she was a strong-willed president's daughter. I went back to my apartment and thought about her. I was mad, but there was a part of me that couldn't hate her, leaving me feeling unsettled. Days passed since the marriage interview, and I hadn't received any rejection. Instead, I was called into the boss's office during my lunch break to be told that there was a date invitation from her. I was genuinely shocked and taken aback. After such a huge fight, her not rejecting me was surprising. It could be some kind of prank. I left the boss's office feeling like I'd been had. In my hand was a note with the date and time of the next meeting. I needed a drink to deal with this. As soon as I got back to the office, I asked a colleague to join me for drinks that night. That evening, after getting the news about the date from the boss, I went out drinking with my colleagues at a bar. The story of the marriage interview had apparently become office gossip, and my colleagues seemed genuinely interested. I amusingly shared with them how I had a major fight with the president's daughter at the marriage interview. My colleagues jokingly warned me, "You're gonna get fired," and I felt a chill thinking it might not be that far-fetched. To shake off that anxiety, I got seriously drunk, which was something I hadn't done in a long time. A junior female colleague was doing her best to support my drunken self. As we staggered towards the subway station, I spotted Nora Harris in the crowd. Our eyes locked instantly. Then, expressionlessly, she flashed me the middle finger. In response to her blatant provocation, my drunken head heated up. I was pulled along by my junior female colleague as I wobbled. Even as I was being led, I couldn't take my eyes off Nora. Noticing my gaze, Nora nonchalantly lifted her skirt to flash her pure white thighs at me. I was captivated by their whiteness. Just as I heard, "Watch out, you're going to hurt yourself," I crashed into a corner wall. I saw stars as I banged my head on the wall. Ouch! I crumpled over, clutching my throbbing head that I had hit hard. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Nora grinning wickedly. What the hell? I can't help but grumble to myself, she can smile after all. However, strangely, I didn't feel angry. I found myself starting to enjoy Nora's audacious personality. The date that I was dreading somehow became something I was looking forward to. On the day of our date, I still had a bandage plastered on my forehead. Despite this, Nora's expression didn't change at all. As soon as we sat down side by side on a park bench, Nora repeated the words she had said during our initial meeting. "Do you actually want to get married?" Hearing the same phrase again, I felt there was a catch to this matchmaking. I thought that she might have a compelling reason to get married. "If there's a reason, I can help. Would you mind sharing it with me honestly?" She looked at me, her eyes wide with surprise. From my serious expression, she understood I wasn't joking. After a deep breath, she began to speak. This marriage interview, it seems, was something she had requested to her father. Apparently she wanted to prove herself to Tom. She had been in a long-term relationship with her first love. But she had been betrayed by him and her best friend. Betrayed by her boyfriend and her best friend. The deeply wounded Nora wanted to get married to show them up. She wanted to show them that she didn't need them. That was the reason why she was rushing into this matchmaking. Her story left me a bit flabbergasted, but I also felt sympathy for her being betrayed by people she trusted. Being left alone suddenly is hard. I am a daughter of a president, so it'd be like you're marrying up, right? I'll also treat your parents well, if you want. We can even divorce when it suits you. Her face was dead serious as she desperately tried to persuade me. I guess she's this desperate because she still can't forget her first love. Suddenly, I find myself feeling a strange affection for her. So much for her cold beauty persona. Isn't she just a girl who can't forget her first love? I wouldn't mind going out of my way for her. After hearing her whole story, I found myself thinking like that. All right, I'll do it. Let's get married. At my response, her face lit up. Thank you. A faint smile played on her lips as she held back her tears. The disbalance in her expression was so beautiful that I found myself at a loss for words. It just hit me how sudden moments that capture your heart can be. The talk of marriage moved ahead swiftly. After all, she, Nora, wanted to get married as soon as possible. When I reported my plans to marry to the boss, he was happier than when his own son got married. I want to pay a visit to your parents, she said. When I was about to start looking for a wedding venue, Nora said so with a serious face. I haven't been back to my hometown or my parents' house in a long time. For me, my hometown was a place I had essentially abandoned. Only embarrassing memories remain. I was a little afraid to take her back to such a place. I didn't want to deliberately show her parts of myself that I disliked. But she said, it's a necessary step, and wouldn't take no for an answer. In a way, she almost forcefully decided on my return home. When we actually got there, I was surprised to find everything looking so familiar. The family home I so disliked returning to now felt incredibly nostalgic. Seeing my parents again after a long time, they had aged more than I imagined and looked noticeably smaller. My mom teared up at the sight of me, and when I introduced Nora as my future wife, she sobbed. She was overwhelmed with joy. My silent dad also seemed happy about my return, albeit in his own quiet way. After the greeting with my parents, I took her to something she had insisted on seeing during our visit. I led her behind the family's barn. There, her eyes lit up and she exclaimed, "This is amazing. My motorcycle was just left out there, next to the barn." Surprisingly, she loves motorcycles and has a license for large ones. She'd heard about me riding a motorcycle in my student days and had asked to see it. It's not a big one, but it's a bike I cherished. She stared at it for a while and then said thank you. After that, I decided to show Nora around the neighborhood. So, this is where you grew up. Looking down on the river from the embankment, Nora said with deep emotion. Compared to the city where she grew up, this must have seemed like a peaceful countryside. Everything might be new to her. After deciding to get married and meeting a few times, Nora's expression gradually softened. She would even flash a small smile at me. If we build a home together, will she smile more? As I thought about creating a warm home, I felt a bit foolish. She's marrying me not because she loves me, I remembered. But I guess it's okay because I'm in love with her. Hey, is that you, Robert? A hoarse voice called out to me, probably from too much drink. Turning around, I saw an old friend from my rebellious days, Steve, looking at me with a surprised expression. On either side of Steve, young punks still in their prime were standing by. It seemed Steve couldn't manage to reform himself after all. Yes, but who are you again? At my reply, the heat in the room instantly surged. I figured he was a mate from my reckless past, but his features had changed so much I couldn't recognize him. The signs of a rough life were etched onto his face. You think you can just waltz back here after all this time, acting high and mighty like the old days? He glared and threatened me, but I wasn't scared in the slightest. My only worry was whether my girlfriend who was with me would be in any harm. As we locked eyes, Nora peeked her head out between us. So it's true you were a badass, she said, starting to laugh, clutching her stomach. Seeing her laugh so freely, both Steve and I were taken aback, losing momentum. Who's this you're with? She's the woman I'm going to marry. I see. Just like that, a peaceful expression fell over Steve's face as he looked at Nora. It seems like your life has been moving on just fine. Hearing that, I remembered clearly who this guy was. The moment I realized, I froze on the spot. He was my ex-girlfriend's brother. I wanted to say something, but the words stuck in my throat, and I couldn't get anything out. While I was frozen in place, he gave Nora a gentle pat on the shoulder and smiled. Be happy with Robert. I had a sister too. She's not in this world anymore, but do it for her sake as well. Leaving those words behind, he started to walk towards his car parked under the levee. The way he slouched slightly as he walked looked like a testament to the past he was carrying. As I stood there in a daze, Nora took my arm and smiled. Should we go visit your ex-girlfriend and your buddy? At her words, I shuddered. I wondered how she knew, my mind spinning. I left my hometown because of a motorcycle accident. I loved motorcycles since my rebellious days, and in my youthful folly, I thought reckless riding was cool. Back then, my girlfriend was a year younger, and she often rode behind me on my motorcycle. The night of the accident, I was at the police station because of a fight I got into during the day, along with my parents and my school teacher. When she heard I was taken to the station, she panicked. She was riding on the back of my buddy's bike to accompany me up from the station when the accident happened. It wasn't because they were riding recklessly. The driver of the compact car that hit their motorcycle was an unlicensed high schooler. He was a kid just like us, up to no good, and apparently he fled the scene without even calling an ambulance. When I was finally released from the police station, I remember being punched out of the blue by her brother at the entrance. When I finally saw her and my buddy in the cold morgue, I couldn't even cry. I was left in a state of utter disbelief, emotionless, unable to do anything but gaze at the two of them. Afterward, as soon as I graduated, I left my hometown. I left everything behind, including my home, to start afresh. To my surprise, Nora seemed to know all about this. My dad would have definitely looked into my potential match, she said with a hint of regret. It made me wonder, knowing all that, why she would agree to this matchmaking. Knowing my past, how did this match even happen? By all accounts, I was a nuisance, wasn't I? Did her father not consider the harm it could do to his daughter? Times change. My dad understands that, and so do I," she retorted, sounding a bit upset. I scratched my head, realizing the depth of Nora's father's understanding. Perhaps being raised by such a parent is what made Nora as compassionate as she is. Let me meet her and his best friend. For the first time, I visited the graves of my ex-girlfriend and best friend. Nora stood next to me, her hands folded in silent prayer. When I asked her what she'd been talking about, she said, "I was informing them about our marriage," with a chuckle. I declared that I was taking Robert. With a serious face, Nora walked ahead, leaving me stunned. She turned back and reached out to me. I took her hand. We held hands for the first time. Her hand was slightly sweaty, perhaps from the nervousness. Her face was calm as always. When I gently swung our hands, she looked down and gave a small, shy smile. Her shy smile was endearing. I wished she could open up to me sooner. And so, we walked hand in hand down the Sunset Road, lost in thought. 6 months after greeting my parents, we were finally on the eve of our wedding. Nora was still a grad student and surprisingly, busier than I was with my job. "You're free to do what you want on your last night as a bachelor, you know," Nora told me at the cafe we were meeting at. My coworkers had invited me for drinks, but I wasn't particularly excited about my last bachelor's night. I was a little worried that Nora might get cold feet at the last moment. Nora, unaware of my feelings, seemed slightly upset. I think she feels guilty for pushing me into this marriage. Ew, how awful. Nora's face fell as she raised her voice. "Do you know them? It's my ex, Tom." As I turned to the entrance, I saw a man in a suit and a trendy-looking girl entering the cafe. When the man spotted Nora, a distasteful grin spread across his face. He walked straight over to our table. "Long time no see. So, you're getting married, huh?" He talked as if we were close, but his eyes weren't smiling. He was a good-looking guy, but there was a hint of danger about him. "Tomorrow is our wedding. It's a small ceremony for my family only. This is Robert. He's going to be my husband." Nora introduced. I gave a slight bow and muttered a quick, "Hi." The man looked down at me as though I was something disgusting. The girl with him looked anxious. "So, you're being shipped off to a husband so soon. Is this an arranged marriage, or just a move to get back at me?" Pathetic. Despite his provocative words, her expression remained unchanged. She cast her eyes down, seemingly ignoring the man's harsh words. Even if Nora could shrug it off, I couldn't. I glared at the man from my seat. My attitude seemed to make him falter slightly. I don't know where he comes from, but I'm not about to be bested by some man who's probably never thrown a punch in his life. "Are you trying to pick a fight with my wife, or with me?" "I don't back down from a fight, you know. What are you gonna do?" "So what if it's an arranged marriage? Nora is the woman I chose. She's too good for you." When I growled back, Tom's face went pale. Layla, who fell in love with Tom, pulled the man's sleeve and said in a low voice, "Stop it. Really? You're gonna marry this uncouth man? Don't expect to be happy." Tom spat out a petty parting shot, then hurried out of the cafe as though he was fleeing. Nora watched him go, her face stunned. Then, she turned to look at me intently. I felt strangely uncomfortable under her gaze. Double what? Unable to endure Nora's scrutiny, I turned away. Ignoring my discomfort, she placed her hands on my cheeks and turned my face towards her. "Do you love me?" She looked deeply into my eyes and quietly asked the question. Caught off guard, I started to panic. My body temperature rose dramatically. At the same time, an irrational anger welled up in me. What a clueless woman. My words slipped out in embarrassed frustration. She frowned and gave my cheek a firm pinch. Ouch, ouch, stop it. I just like you, okay? I never said you had to like me back. The pinching fingers finally released me, but my moment of relief was short-lived as she swiftly slapped both her hands on my cheeks. Why do I have to endure this? I glared at Nora, my eyes watering from the pain in my cheeks. How clueless can you be, you thick-headed man? Surprised by her sudden confession, I pinched my own cheek. I wanted to make sure I wasn't dreaming. My cheek did hurt, and she was standing in front of me, looking angry. And she seemed to be on the verge of tears. Making the bride cry the day before the wedding was unforgivable. I'm sorry. I apologize. I realized that I was the clueless one. She had been giving me signals all this time, and I had missed them. Nora stood there, her face pouting. Tomorrow, she would be standing next to me in a pure white wedding dress. I was glad I could confirm her feelings the day before our wedding. We might have our fair share of arguments, but we'd be a happy couple. Indeed, Nora and I were a perfect match. My name is David Richardson. I'm a 23-year-old government administrator. 2 years ago, I got my administrative qualification and left the company I'd been working at to join the current office where I'm employed. I'm getting used to the work, and I'm generally enjoying life. But to be honest, I do have one concern. Oh, brother, not again. Why is this place such a mess? My sister, Emily, visits my apartment, and she always starts with this comment, furrowing her brows and sighing deeply. Come on, I can't help it. I'm busy with work. Listen, David, I'm telling you this because I'm worried. Living in such an unsanitary place, eating junk food all day, it's just too unhealthy. Indeed, I haven't paid attention to what I ate recently, and I've been feeling stressed living in this mess. Emily, always the responsible one, comes to my apartment almost every week, but I mess it up faster than she can clean. You're right. You're absolutely right, Emily. David, you're doing well financially now, so why not consider a housekeeping service? A housekeeping service. Yes, you pay them, and a housekeeper comes to your house and does all sorts of chores, including cleaning. Even if they can't come every day, having them 2 or 3 times a week would make a huge difference, I think. I hadn't even considered such a service before. But I'm not good at housework, so it's a perfect fit for me. Emily, thank you. I'll try a housekeeping service right away. That's a good idea. You can't even get a girlfriend with this mess, you know. At Emily's words, I blushed in embarrassment. I've never had a girlfriend in my 23 years of life. Struck by her accurate guess, I blurted out a response, flustered. Well, that's none of your business. Okay. And with a small chuckle, Emily left the apartment spotless and went home. Despite everything, I'm truly grateful to Emily. I actually have a bitter memory related to romance. That's partly why I've been hesitant to get involved in romantic relationships. During my senior year of high school, there was a girl I liked. Her name was Claire, a beautiful, kind, and intelligent classmate. Hey David, shall we study together at the library again today? Sounds great, let's do it. So, we spent almost every day studying together at the private library. Back then, I was aiming for a scholarship program at college, so I devoted myself to studying. Claire, do you know how to solve this problem? Oh, sure. You should apply this formula here. When Claire said this, I was startled by the scent of sweet shampoo coming from her long hair as she looked into her notebook. At this time, I was already in love with Claire. Once we finished applying to colleges, we would have more free time for each other. I planned to confess my feelings to her then. With this goal in mind, I spent my high school days, but the situation took an unexpected turn. I was chosen for a special scholarship as planned, but I ended up declining it. It turned out that during this time, my father fell sick and could no longer work, and our family's financial situation became dire. I decided that going to college in this situation would be too difficult, so I decided to start working right after high school graduation. I was disappointed that I couldn't go to college, but I decided to move forward and turn the page. However, this situation drastically changed my relationship with Claire. I tried to head to the library with Claire as usual, but something seemed off about her. "David, I heard you're giving up going to college and you're going to start working right after high school." "Yay, that's actually the case. It's the first time I'm hearing about this." "I thought it would worry you, Claire. The college where you had the recommendation slot, my best friend was aiming for that also. Honestly, when I heard that you declined the recommendation, she was also shocked. If you were going to decline it, I wish you had given that slot to her from the beginning." I was at a loss for words after hearing this. From Claire's best friend's perspective, my actions must have been inexplicable and probably shocking. "Claire, I'm sorry. It's a bit complicated for me too, even though we spent every day together." Before I knew it, Claire's eyes were filled with tears. "David, I'm sorry, but I think I'll keep my distance from you from now on." With that, Claire started running in the opposite direction of the library. I wanted to chase after Claire, but in the end, all I could do was stand there. Regardless of the reason, I had deeply hurt her with this incident. So we ended up drifting apart after graduating from high school without resolving anything. I still feel guilty for what I did to her. Just as I was reflecting on my past love like this, something unexpected happened. Later, I ended up promptly getting a housekeeper. When the doorbell rang, I opened the door and was taken aback. "Waiting for you." Wait, what? There she was, unmistakably Claire. She had grown into a stunningly beautiful, fair-skinned woman. She too, with a surprised expression, opened her mouth. "No way, David is my client today." Shocked, we were both frozen in place for a while, but we couldn't stay like this forever. I invited Claire into the living room, handed her some tea, and Claire said thank you and began to speak slowly. "Even though we ended things on such a note, I'm truly sorry for that time. I heard about the real reason why you gave up going to college from other friends." Claire said this with a genuinely apologetic expression. I was surprised by this turn of events as I thought she must have hated me by now. "No, it's okay. Looking back, I realize I should have explained the reason more clearly," I said. But you were just trying to keep me from worrying, right, David? I truly regret having hurt you like that," Claire replied, looking directly at me. Claire had grown even more beautiful than before, and I couldn't help but feel a bit flustered. Trying not to show my feelings, I looked away and said, "Let's let bygones be bygones. Anyway, thanks for coming today." "Thank you, David. I appreciate you saying that. In order to apologize for what I did, I want to help with whatever you need." As she said this, Claire donned a tidy white apron with neat frills and efficiently began to clean. Being a man, there were some bugs that shouldn't be seen, but it was a good thing that I had tidied them up beforehand. Thanks to her, my messy room was transformed into a clean space in just a day. But I couldn't help wondering, why was Claire working for a cleaning service? I'm sure she had gone to college, but I don't know anything about what happened afterward. Still, I couldn't ask her about every detail of that. After Claire finished cleaning, she cooked dinner for me as part of her service. As I watched her cook skillfully in the kitchen, I found myself wondering if she normally cooked for someone else in this manner. she served a freshly cooked, hot gratin. It was so delicious that I was moved. Just after I finished eating dinner, I received a phone call from work, so I told Claire, "Thank you for today," and answered the phone in my room. The call ended up being longer than I expected, and before I knew it, almost 2 hours had passed. Thinking that Claire must have left by then, I was surprised to find her asleep at the table when I returned to the living room. I gently shook her shoulder and said, "Claire, wake up. It's already 11 o'clock. What, it's that late already? Oh no, I have work tomorrow. If I head to the station now, I'll barely catch the last train." Seeing Claire panic with a pale face, I could tell she was really in a tight spot. "Claire, are you okay? You look really tired." "Yes, my part-time job is really demanding, and to be honest, I'm maxed out. I'm sorry for overstaying. I am leaving now." As Claire scrambled to grab her bag, I quickly grabbed her arm. I couldn't let her go home alone in her current state. "David, what's wrong? You said earlier, Claire, that you'd do anything to apologize, right? So here's my request. Please stay over tonight." "What?" At my words, Claire's eyes widened. "I want you to cook another delicious breakfast tomorrow, and after that, you can leave. If that's all you're asking, I'm grateful." With that, Claire took a shower and immediately fell asleep in the guest room. She must have been really tired. I returned to my room and ended the long day by falling asleep. The next morning, I woke up to find breakfast ready on the table, along with a note from Claire saying, "Thank you for yesterday." I was relieved to see that she had apparently made it to work okay, but to my surprise, Susan showed up at my apartment again that night. As she prepared dinner, she began to tell me something. "Thank you so much for yesterday. I was really tired, so it helped a lot." "No problem. You do seem pretty busy though." "Well, the truth is I'm living in an apartment in a suburb of Denver with my mom. After high school, my parents divorced and things got tough financially. I had to drop out of college 2 years ago and have been working part-time jobs ever since to get by." "I see. That sounds hard. The suburb of Denver isn't exactly bustling. The transportation is not the best either. It must be tough to commute here. Also, my mom isn't in the best health, so I'm trying to help her. That's why I'm studying to get a computer certification." "You really are busy." "Yes, but I want to repay my mom for everything." With that, Claire smiled gently. "Thank you so much for everything. Sorry to have bothered you." "Claire, wait." I stopped her as she was about to leave. "If you don't mind, why don't you stay at my place when you come into town for work? I'd love it if you could cook for me. My apartment is in a great location with good public transportations. It might take some of the burden off of you." Honestly, I was afraid she'd be put off by my suggestion, but Claire responded with a happy smile. "David, thank you so much. Okay. In return, I'll clean and cook for you." From that day forward, I started asking Claire to take care of my housework on a regular basis. I always paid her as agreed, but when she stayed over at my place, Claire cooked extra food for me. She told me that she used to get really tired from the commute alone, but now that she could stay at my place when she had jobs nearby, it had made her life much easier. Having her clean my apartment was also a great help for me. One day, my sister Emily happened to meet Claire and was surprised. "Why is such a beautiful woman in your apartment, David?" "Emily. This person is the housekeeper." "Nice to meet you. I'm Claire. Actually, I went to high school with David." "Oh, nice to meet you. I'm his sister, Emily. Despite my clumsy brother, I hope we get along well." Emily quickly became friends with Claire. The two of them were chatting happily, and before I knew it, they were cooking together in the kitchen, and when they ate dinner together, They kept calling each other Claire and Emily, and seemed to be having a great time. I never imagined they would become so close. Even after Emily went home, Claire seemed to be in a good mood. Emily is such a mature and cute girl. She was following you around all the time. Wasn't she a bother? Not at all. I'm an only child, so it felt like I had a little sister. It was fun. After that, Emily frequently visited my apartment to cook and sew with Claire. They always seemed to have a great time together. Watching them, I realized how much I cared for Claire. Despite telling myself that it was all in the past, my feelings for her were only growing stronger. But I knew that Claire was just being kind to me because of her job. Right now, just being able to be with her makes me happy. I should be content with that. I kept telling myself that, but then an unexpected event happened. David, I have something to tell you. I'm thinking of quitting the housekeeping service soon. Why, Claire? I was taken aback by Claire's words. You know, my relatives have arranged to have a meeting with a potential suitor. He runs his own business, and it seems I could get a full-time position there if we get married. It would put my mother's mind at ease, and I've realized I can't just wander aimlessly in life. Claire chatted nonchalantly while briskly handling the housework as usual. However, she never made eye contact with me. I felt both shocked and somewhat uneasy at her words. I see. Well, I feel lonely, I responded. Haha, but I'll work my hardest until I leave. With that, Claire forced a smile and left the apartment. Even if they were not in a relationship yet, it might be awkward for her to stay over at a guy's place before the formal meeting. Despite having some of Claire's homemade food available, I didn't have the appetite to eat, spending time in the living room in a daze. The next thing I knew, Emily had come over and was shocked to see me in a taste of abandonment. Hey, what's going on with you? You're just sitting in the dark, staring into space. Well, when I explained about Claire's arranged meeting, Emily was also surprised. Oh, that's unfortunate. Yeah. Seeing me crestfallen, Emily spoke up. You know, you should tell Claire how you feel. It's clear to see. You love Claire, don't you? If you don't express your feelings before she's gone, you'll definitely regret it. Even if you get turned down in the end, confessing your feelings will prevent any lingering regret. After hearing Emily's words, I realized she was right. Back in high school, we had missed each other because we didn't communicate properly. I don't want to end up like that again. I want to convey to her just how important she is to me. I decided to request Claire's housekeeping service again, and waited for her to come. When Claire visited the apartment as usual, I stood directly in front of her. Claire, I have something to tell you. What is it? I've never been this nervous in my life. But if I don't share my feelings now, I will definitely regret it. That was far scarier than getting turned down. I've always loved you, Claire, ever since high school. That hasn't changed even now that we've reconnected. As I confessed, Claire was surprised and looked at me. Honestly, it felt like my face was on fire, but I had to finish. So, if it's what you want, I want you to go to the arranged meeting. But if it's not what you want, I want you to stop. All I want is for you to be happy, Claire. David. As soon as I finished talking, Claire threw her arms around me. I hadn't dreamed that she'd respond this way, and I turned bright red. I don't really want to go to that meeting, either. I love you, David. Claire. I gently stroked her head. Claire, wiping her tears, continued to speak slowly. I was truly happy when you, David, let me stay at your house and were so kind to me. But I wondered if it was okay for me to keep relying on your kindness like that. You graduated from high school and became a government administrator, whereas I've achieved nothing. I thought there must be someone better suited for you, David, and if I keep hanging around you, it would be a burden to you. Never had I imagined Claire felt this way. We both had feelings for each other, but neither of us noticed. But I won't repeat the mistakes we made in high school. That's not true. It's okay if it takes some time. Let's move forward slowly on the path that's best for you, Claire. Your mom would want your happiness more than anything. David, thank you. And like that, we held each other tightly. Feeling Claire's warmth close to me, my love for her surged anew. I didn't want to let her go, ever. And so, we officially started dating. Claire, fulfilling her long-time dream, got her computer certification 6 months later and started her career as a web designer. We took this opportunity to officially start living together, and Claire's mom moved into a house nearby. Now we can meet whenever we want. It's a relief. Currently, the two of us are discussing marriage. Well, to be precise, it's 3 of us. Emily is having a great time with Claire, looking at wedding catalogs. Wow, this dress is cute too. Oh, but this one might be better. Sounds great, Emily. Make sure you dress up for the occasion. Of course, since it's a special occasion, Claire, you should change outfits at least 3 times. Like this, the two are enthusiastically planning a wedding. Oh boy. If we incorporate all of Emily's ideas, it might cost us a fortune. But seeing the smiles on the 2 most important women in my life, I can't help but think it's worth it. How did you like it? Your subscription will be a great motivation for our production. See you in the next video.